Okay, I think I got it recording on the YouTube channel. Sorry.
Looks like it is, says it's live.
Perfect. All right. Look like Andrew's coming and Susan's on now too. Sorry, I was multitasking here, not looking at this other screen, but looks like everyone's here now. So take it away.
Who's starting?
Either you or Susan, right, Charity? Since you guys are.
Yeah, and I don't see Susan on here.
She's joining right now. She's in the process. It says.
Okay.
Come on right now.
Blue circling right now.
There she is. Says she's on. Susan, can you hear us? No, she can hear us or not. All right. Well, while she's joining, we're going to go and just I can pull up the agenda. I can go ahead and start if you'd like me to. Yes?
Sounds good.
Okay. I think Doug, you're on mute.
Pull it up, or do you have it?
I have it. Do you want me to share my
Yeah,
screen?
you can just share the screen now. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Do you see the agenda? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so we'll call to order. And I've never run this meeting before, so when we call to order, I'm just assuming we're going to start. We have any public comments that we need to address? All right. Well, then I would like.
Sorry, just I know I saw that Jody joined, so I don't know, Jody, if you wanted to share any updates with us from Historic Main Street, or if you are more in listening mode.
Yes, there's a couple of updates that I would be happy to share with you. So we are still trying to figure out what to do as a topper to the water fountain along Main Street. We came up with a couple of with the committee that was formed with neighborhood association members, citizens in general, and some Main Street folks. Basically, we submitted that to Lance and he did not approve it, but he did come up with more money for it. So at this point in time, they're sort of regrouping the committee. A couple people have dropped off due to just being frustrated that what they decided on wasn't acceptable. And so if there isn't any interest from anybody in this group now joining the reforming group, please let me know. That group would, I'm sure, like to have your input. The person chairing the committee actually is one of the folks from the Westland Historical Society. Anyway, so I can certainly get your name to them if you are interested in that. I think the amount of money now that's being authorized for that is $5,000. So they're going to start looking at new different ideas. Anyway, so
when do they meet? Is it on a regular basis, or is it sort of?
Well,
catches.
I think that now that they're reforming, that could be open to whoever is interested in joining the group, because I know that, like I said, a couple of the committee members dropped off, and I know that they were going to open it up to ask if anybody else from the neighborhood association wanted to join the group. And so Beth Smolens is the chair of that group, and I can certainly, if you're interested, let her know, and then she can reach out to you as when they've set a meeting. I don't think they've set a next meeting up yet, last I've heard. So, you know, you can just send me an email or tell me now if you are interested in that. So, but at least it's got a little bit more money, and hopefully they can come up with something that is agreeable to Lance and his department and to the people on the committee. So the next thing is that, and I do not know if you want to have any input into this, but this came up, an email came from Lance to both Main Street and to the Neighborhood Association, because there are going to be 2 mini roundabouts, one at 10th and Willamette Falls Drive, and one at the new school and Fields Bridge Park. And those basically have some pavers in them, and then the center is cement. And basically what Lance is asking is if we want to see a design put into that central area, something representative of the city or artistic or something. And so it, basically it would be sort of a decorative element. It's not going to be seen a whole lot. People in some kind of high riding vehicle may be able to see it, or a truck. Pedestrians probably are not actually going to be walking across it. So it doesn't have a huge amount of visibility, but it is something that would be, nice to have something in the middle of that rather than just plain cement, because you will be able to see it somewhat from a car as you're going by it. So if there's any interest from this group, if you think it's a good idea, you don't think it's a good idea, or if you'd like to be involved in the discussion on that, let me know. We haven't started any discussions yet. We just got the email from Lance like 2 days ago, so I thought I would raise it with this group. So if you would like to be involved in that discussion, then we'll certainly include you.
What is the timeline on that? Do you know? So when does the roundabout be in place, and how long up then do we need to, if we want to be involved, have to come up with something?
I have no idea when they're actually going to start work on the 2 roundabouts. I mean, obviously, it's part of the whole 10th Street improvements. And I think they were slated to start work on that the late spring, early summer, and the school, I would assume that's probably a similar kind of time frame. Doug, you may have heard something in terms of timing on when those projects are going to get started. I think, like I said, late spring, early.
Yeah, I don't have specific times, but what I can do is I'll find out from Lance tomorrow, and then I'll email the group with those dates.
I'd also be interested in finding out if there is any possibility for something to be a bit more visible. Like, does it just have to be a kind of basically a circular speed bump for safety reasons, or would there be a possibility to have more of a sculptural element there, that kind of thing? And I would also be curious to confirm whether or not those projects qualify for % for arts funding, because if so, then I believe then it would behoove us to be in the loop, because we would have funds to spend related to that project.
Right, and I don't know the answers to those questions. Basically, they do have to be something that a truck can mount if they need to, because it's a small enough turning radius. But I think the center area, well, it says the center area will only be touched by large semi trucks. So I guess it sounds like that center area will potentially get run over by something, but Doug might be able to confirm that when he speaks to Lance.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind adding that to your list of Lance questions, Doug, that would be awesome. Because even then, like that, there could still be something to be said for some kind of mosaic, or I'm thinking even like some of the intersections, like there's several intersections in Portland where it's not even a roundabout, they just have essentially murals on the street. There might still be opportunities to do something cool there.
Yeah, and that's
I'm texting him right now, and maybe I'll have an answer before the end of this meeting. We'll see.
Super. Yeah, I know that the pictures he forwarded me, were exactly that. They were, pictures of places that have done this, that have sort of a nice design, almost a mosaic in the middle of the street. So I do think it's something that we should at least discuss and find out, what kind of funding, where the funding is coming from, what the parameters are. And probably we need, if we make a decision on trying to go forward with that, we need to make sure we have very clear parameters, since obviously that was the challenge with the fountain topper.
I was just gonna say basically exactly that. I mean, this, it's unfortunate that it keeps happening with Lance's project specifically, but like, there definitely seems to be some clarity needed between when the Arts Commission, when it's appropriate for us to like do the stuff versus like we sort of had the opportunity with the fountain topper and said, no, that's not really us. But then like now Lance is in this weird place where he's trying to cobble something together. Anyway, it's a fuzzy spot and there's something for us to keep thinking about.
Agreed.
That's all I have. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. All right, approval of minutes from 2/2/2022. Do I have a movement, a motion to approve the minutes from last time?
I move to approve them.
Thank you, Carrie. Another second.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it was Andrew raised his hand and I heard somebody else, but I couldn't see who it was. Okay, so it's moving on to, obviously, I'm Charity and Susan is also, we are the new co-chairs for the Arts and Culture Commission. I don't know if we need to review commission purpose and equity statements. Do I need to do that? Look here. Asking. Yes, no, maybe.
Just being new to the group, I was kind of looking around for guidance about what exactly the charge is of the group from City Council and what exactly we're supposed to do. So I've read it. I don't know if others need that review, but I like that as a focusing bit. But I've done it, so I'm feeling good.
Okay. All right, well, just in a matter of time, unless we think that we need to review it, I was going to move on to old business. Update on the, is there any updates on the electronic sign-up sheet?
We've received 5 entries now versus last month's 3. But I get the real reason I wanted to get this on the agenda was because we had talked last time about getting this promoted more broadly, ideally like through the city's social channels. And I didn't know if that was something we needed to vote on or if that's something where we can just say, hey, Alicia, or it's not Alicia anymore, Dylan, right? Or no, there's somebody new that you mentioned last time that I wrote it down somewhere.
Danielle.
Yes. Can we just say, hey, Danielle, would you mind like sending this out on the city's Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and what have you? Or if we need to vote on that first. I wasn't sure what the right process was. I'm happy to send it along to Danielle and come up with a square image of some sort to accompany that. But
I think if you, I don't mean to interrupt, but if you send it to Danielle and to Dylan, they can go from there. And I know that Dylan will also probably we'll find an image, or they'll find an image to go if you want it to go in the newsletter, which comes out on Thursdays.
Okay.
I think with the water bill, but it's also electronic, and that's probably the biggest distribution that we have electronically through the city, as well as our other mediums, which we can of course do through the library and also through the city.
okay, so I'm happy to send that along to Danielle and Dylan if people are cool with that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And Doug, if we wanted to get that to go out through the library as well, would you be the right person to keep in the loop on that? Or is there somebody else at the library that?
Just send it to Mel and I, and then we'll get it to the right places.
Okay.
And then I have a question about I think I brought up the last time, and maybe this is going on later business, but for the city, do we have separate ones? Like we said, we have a Facebook for the city, but do you have them for separate out for, say, like the Arts and Culture Commission?
We don't have anything specific to our commission.
Okay.
As far as I know, the only citizen advisory groups that do, well, like Parks and Rec does, but I don't know that the advisory commission specifically does. I think it's just all through the Parks and Rec department.
Okay.
And I guess my personal recommendation is that we not even go down that path until we have more content to share. At this point, it's been a moot point because we haven't had much outbound communication. But I would hate to see us set all that up if we didn't have an actual social media strategy. So I think this is our first time even piggybacking on the city's accounts.
Okay.
So I guess I'd want to get to the point where we're worried that we're really annoying Danielle, the city, before we start spinning up our own. That's
Yeah, that
opinion.
sounds great. That answers my question. And Susan, I see you have your hand up. You have a question?
I do, and Carrie touched on it a little bit. I'm just curious, what is the content that we want to send out to people? And, you know, if we collect all these email addresses, do we have a plan for what we're going to start sending them?
Most immediately, and the reason that there's some urgency to this right now is it will become kind of our initial ground for trying to get people to reply to our call for art. And then to later advertise the show at the library in August. But since this is our first kind of foray into a true public event, hopefully this will just become the first of many opportunities to reach out to a known art loving public about events we're sponsoring or partnering with, or just, you know, amplifying similar groups' voices. So if Jody has something going on, then we can also, you know, put that out there and that kind of thing. It's just up to this point, we haven't had an audience and we haven't had anything to promote. And if you have both of those problems at the same time, then it's not a problem, right?
Right.
But if you have one of those things and not the other, then it's a problem.
Yeah. And what I just recently did with the sustainability committee board, because they have the different talks, they have educational talks. I just posted it on my Facebook. So I just said, hey, here's the link. And I had so many of my friends go, I didn't even know this existed. So I think that's another way that I think I'm going to use it as we start and grow as a group, that I'm going to use my own is to try to spread the word and locally.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So we had the show at the library draft. That was lovely done. Do you want, I have it here, I believe it is. Right here.
I would have some comments or
Oh, it's not here.
suggestions for it or so, if that is okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally. I mean, I hoped, my initial intention was to get it out in time to accompany
There it is.
the agenda.
No, I like it a lot.
That obviously didn't happen. And so I don't even have any expectation that everybody read this, because how could I? Because I just sent it out. So my apologies.
No, but don't worry.
You did a very nice job for just sending it out.
And I mean,
so.
we both know how it works when you apply for a show and all that. So great work to put that together for us. But
It's largely stolen.
Yeah.
I
Borrowed with pride.
yeah.
Right.
I think you mentioned one thing, if we should take a commission. That's a question for Doug too, because isn't that the library usually takes some sort of commission when something is sold? And so my question would be, if we have something sold in that show, where does it go to, or has it to go to the library, or should we take a commission at
Sure.
all?
I can answer that question. We, in my 7 years, have never received any commissions for any art that was sold.
No.
Sometimes an artist will offer a piece from the collection, but that hasn't happened maybe once, Mel, that I can remember. One time, yeah. So I think that's not ever been it may have been a prerequisite in the long time past, but not during my time there. I have no idea what is sold and what isn't sold as far as the artist is concerned.
Okay, and then I have another thing. And so it says the last 2 years, the work should be older than the last 2 years. So I always have trouble when I apply for something. Maybe we can extend that a little bit longer. Let's say now, especially with COVID. And also maybe the suggestion, it's not only the newest work, maybe we can also say your best work, depending on the show, maybe in the future, or like it's a theme, then it doesn't have to be a specific year when the artwork was produced. And also with the wall mounted, I think if we stick only for the 2D art, instead of really 2D art, it could include painting, drawing, and so on and so forth. Then you don't have to be so detailed with all sculptural or textile work and all that. But if you say wall mounted, including 2D art, but not limited to, maybe that's easier to address that 2D art. So that would be my 2 comments to that.
It's funny you mentioned that part, because like that section right there, those 2 paragraphs were probably the most painful to write, because I kept thinking of exceptions. Like I was looking at references of other ones, and it was like, it's 2D or 3D, and 2D is like a work on paper and 3D is a sculpture. And then I was thinking, well, but what about like a kimono, or what about, like, I kept thinking about things that didn't fit in there. And so then I was like, well, they're just wall mounted.
I like wall mounted because it's not usual what people use, but if you say wall mounted, including 2D in example, or not limited to, and then you list something, I guess then you don't get into trouble like or sculptural or textile or whatnot. But I like also that you mentioned it shouldn't be extend that and that amount of size or weight. That's for sure. I like that.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a weight limit before, but in one of the ones I was looking at, it had that, and I was like, that makes sense.
Yeah, especially if it's a sculpture or like a, what is it, assemblage. And
Right.
I don't know how sturdy the walls in the library are for how much weight. So in that case, I guess it's a good thought.
And I thought that I looked on the website for the current call, but it looks like it's not up yet. So you'll see at the end of this document, I have a bunch, and even in comments throughout, a lot of this, I thought we could just defer to Cheryl at the library on how things are typically done. She might already have recommendations on maximum dimensions, and we can just copy those. So a lot of the stuff that's in here is really more like note to self. We need to find out these things for inclusion. But definitely there's things we are including that we don't need to. If you don't think we need to be as exhaustive in different recommended media, then we can tear a lot of that out. I initially had something in here, and again, like obviously a lot of my opinions are making their way in here just by virtue of writing it. I initially had something in here that said explicitly that time-based art wouldn't be eligible for this show. And the only reason, and then I decided that sounded harsh, and so I removed it, but I didn't talk about it. So it's kind of like implicitly excluded. And the only reason I even excluded it was really because since this is our first show, I figured we need to have some confines to make our lives manageable. I think hanging our first show is already going to be a ton of work. And if we're also worried about projections on electricity and how the lighting over here is interfering with this projection over there, blah, 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 then it just starts to make things more complicated than we might want them to be our first time out.
I think an easy way to delineate the different types of media is we could just say, hey, this has to be wall hanging, medium, and it also can't protrude like more than 4 or 5 inches from the wall. And that's going to kind of give us our all-encompassing, basically any type of sculptural or painting or whatever. As long as it is confined within a wall space, then it's going to be fine. And I think last time we also said that we would extend it to 3 years, because, and again, that was because we wanted the focus, as we had talked about, to be things people are making currently, so we can kind of get a sense of what artists are currently producing in West Linn.
And I stole that language wherever the time frame is. Because we had talked last time about, I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 3 years, but then I happened upon a call that said, we encourage you to, and I kind of like that because it's not saying work must be produced in this time frame. It's just saying, we especially like new stuff. And yeah, we could remove it entirely. We could say 3 years. We could make it less soft. So it's not, we encourage, but must be whatever.
I like the timeline or the time limit 3 years, but maybe also, as I said, in the future that we say the theme, then it doesn't have to be a specific last 3 years, or it depends on what we want to do. But in general, sometimes maybe time is not necessary, or when you say your best work or whatever. But in general, 3 years I like better than 2. 2 is like, but 3, yeah. If we stick to 3 years, I would like that.
That sounds good.
Well, and did you put in here, I haven't looked at it super closely, but I do have in my notes from last time that it's sort of the state of the arts in West Linn. And I don't know if we wanted to sort of give that over as its official title, or it might be connected to the timing thing. But I also like, we're at people's, not their mercy, but like, if they say they made it in the last 3 years, like, okay, great. If they made it 15 years ago, we will never know. So it's all sort of, I'm sure there's a lot of that in art in general, but like,
Yeah.
to our best of our ability, we'd like it to be recent.
Right. Yeah, so theme is a big question. So last time we talked about keeping it, like, I think we need a title. So we need a theme to the extent that it's a marketable umbrella, right? But keeping it fairly wide open, that it's not like, send us your best image of a coho salmon, but like a fairly broad thing. One thing that came up, so I reached out to folks in Wilsonville, Lake Oswego, and Oregon City, just to be like, hey, when you write calls within like a municipal context, are there things I should be aware of, blah, blah, blah. I think it was Nicole in Lake Oswego, I forget. But anyway, one of them specifically mentioned that themes are really useful as an out if somebody sends in something offensive or something that clearly just won't work within a public art context, that the theme is always a nice way to say, if you get pushback on why didn't you accept my work, to say that this wasn't something that worked within our theme. And so that just kind of made me think, okay, well, that's a good reason to have a tightly enough defined umbrella that it provides you a little bit more of a binary yay or nay when you're reviewing stuff.
I also could say that this is going to be in a space that children frequent, and so this has to be all ages artwork, essentially.
Yep.
I think that's important as far as being able to lock down things that would be offensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
What comes to my mind is like pretty simple, and it's the first show. Why don't we stick with like living in West Linn, and everybody can come up with whatever. One people see river and landscape, the next one see the salmon or the trees or the schools or something abstract. I don't know. Only throw it out because it came to my mind right now. Maybe we have something that has a name, but it's still open enough that everybody can apply with something.
Right. That was my hope, was that we weren't eliminating anybody, like, oh, if I'm not a portrait artist, so this isn't for me or anything like that. There was something, and actually, Jody, this might have been a conversation with you about, we were trying to come up with, it might have been when we were talking about doing planters and themes around that, but there was some saying that we were talking about, like where rivers and people meet or something like that.
Yeah, that's the Main Street sort of theme, where rivers and people, that's part of our mission statement, or so that's where that came up. So
we probably don't want to completely lift that directly, because there wouldn't be enough of a relationship between between the neighborhood association and the show at the library to make that really explicit, but that might be a good kind of brainstorming launching pad or
I
something.
don't think we don't have any copyright on that theme, so I mean, for sure.
I would just, I don't know. I wouldn't want to exclude or have people feel like their art needs to relate to West Linn directly. And so sort of living in West Linn or having it have some river or something in there makes me think that if I were an artist, I would be like, oh, I don't do landscapes. This is probably not for me. So I don't know if there is something more. I mean, I don't know who said it last time, but like the state of the arts or the state of, you know, just living, like you could have living in art, I guess, versus like having it be, I just would want to think a little more broadly about something that's less connected to, like you need to be in West Linn, but not making art of West Linn necessarily.
What about we collect like titles? We did that once when I was in the gallery in Beaverton for a January show, because it's always a month that's really low to attract people, and so we throwed out, you know, with the winter whatever, everybody came up with something winter, so that we do the same thing, that we like collect a few ideas and then throw it together maybe in a couple of weeks or so, because we have to get the word out when we want to have artists applying. But I mean, maybe everybody has something in mind tomorrow that we collect all these ideas. I don't know how we can do that, but that we throw them all together, everybody's opinion, and then maybe make a poll out of it or so. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead, Carrie.
Oh, I was just going to say the document now, everybody, well, you don't have access to it right now, Jody, but I'm happy to extend that to you. Just let me know. But everybody else on the call should have commenting access on this document. And I can change that to editing access, like whatever, we can do whatever. So as far as titles are concerned, feel free to just like throw stuff in there in a comment, or we can start another document that's just random list of comments or list of titles. And same goes for any of the content in here. If you want to change anything, add anything, reconsider anything, whatever, then we can get it all in there. I am thinking that it would be ideal if we could get it in pretty solid shape in time to include with the agenda for next month, so that we can have it out there in the public record for anyone who wants to weigh in, and then officially bless it next month. Because it occurs to me, if we're hanging it in August, and you can kind of see my backing up in the timeline, if we hang it in August, we would need to have artwork in hand by like mid to late July at the latest, which means we need to make a decision by like the beginning of July, so that if people back out or whatever, we have time to scramble. I'm guessing that we'll probably need at least a month to actually convene a jury, define the jury, have the jury make decisions, blah, 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 notify people. So I'm thinking that's June, and you figure at least a month for people to actually submit things. So that's May. And so that means that we would need to, it feels like forever from now, but we would actually need to act pretty quickly.
With the jury, I have a question. I mean, I wasn't here the last time, but what was the idea for the jury? I mean, we can, if we know now that in August we have the show, we already can ask people if they would like to jury a show. Or is it only one person, or how many people do you like to have juried the show? Because it could someone from the city hall, it could someone from the library, it could someone from us, or from whatever group we think. And then we already can ask them if they would be able to jury the show, and we would let them know when actually the time is coming up to do that. And that's kind of work we can already throw out besides hanging then. What is the idea of who and how many people could jury?
We didn't start discussing that last time. I used the word selection committee in here just because that's what the bylaws say. I think somewhere in here, I listed who would make up the selection committee from a role standpoint, not from a name standpoint. But there again, that's like all up for debate. And I think I lifted that from either a Wilsonville or a Lake Oswego call. Yeah, I figured it would be maybe some of us, maybe staff from the library, since you're hosting it, maybe just random community members, or arguably not so random, artists in the community, whoever we want it to be. Yeah, Doug?
I think one of the things that at least I was thinking, and maybe I heard this from others at the council level or others, that it would kind of be juried by this group, that this group would be the main jury for this, because it would be you're curating this show as part of the Arts and Culture Commission. I think that's something for you to all consider, because I think that's kind of what the thought was initially. And also the fact that, is this a possibility? And this is just a question for everybody, if you would like to be considered as well for a show like this, for your own works, because many of you identify as artists as well. So I think that's something that you can decide. I think I've earlier on, months ago, mentioned the idea of potentially curating a show of your own works, which may be different than this. And if you wanted to do that, we could also talk about that in the future. But I think that's something that should be considered. But I always was under the impression that this might be something that the Arts and Culture Commission would be curating as the Arts and Culture Commission.
Well, that would definitely make the identification of the committee easier. It's just like, here we are. I did put something up towards the top about having like a small display of works from the commission, because Doug, obviously, like selfishly, I'm like, that's a cool idea. But also, Doug, you had mentioned that you've fielded a lot of questions from community members being like, so who is this commission anyway? Are they even artists? And so there was also some kind of credibility building that could happen by kind of evidencing that. But I did call it out explicitly as a separate aspect of the show to help ensure that there was kind of an acknowledgement of that, and also some boundary from a conflict of interest standpoint of like, yes, some of us or all of us might be during the show, and yes, some of us might be in the show, but the real estate set up for each of those things is separate, and us liking our own work is not taking potential display space away from other people.
And I think that's a good point. And I think we can look at the layout, and I'm hoping that the next meeting, in fact, I can tell you that the next meeting, if you choose to can be at the library, and we can have it in the community room, where then you could actually see the space for those of you that haven't been there or not thought about it with this lens. And then also our main area, and also the what we call the fireplace room. Obviously, they don't have necessarily walls, but they have the ability for easels and pedestals. And so there may be, and also the ability, if you choose to curate this in a way, I'd be open to the option of having it in other places in the library that are also very accessible and visual for people to encounter. So you could have that actual separation if you wanted to use the whole community room for the things you curate and the things that you want, with a directional to another place in the library.
That can work well too. And then we'd also talked last time about possibly involving student works. And so I mentioned that there as well. But again, I was trying to just kind of like capture the ideas I was hearing, and am equally wanting to respond to like, I'm more of the mind of like, let's tighten the scope as much as possible so that we don't drive ourselves more insane than necessary, but also make it, engaging for the community.
I think with the school, that's a nice idea, but maybe we should separate that to a different time, because if you want to put everything in that space, even our information or not, and then the students, but what do you limit it to one school, to high school only, or to middle schools too, because then it will be so much. Or at the same time, when we have the August show, because it's summer break, maybe we find in the school a weekend or something where we can show student work or something like that. I don't know if that is possible because the school is closed, but I guess both in one show might be too much, as you said.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting idea to do a separate show, like maybe not this year, but like maybe next June, like a culmination of like celebrating arts in the schools for that school year or something like that. One, and this would be separate from this, but another thing that I was thinking we could potentially do someday is working with I think it's called MAP Partners. It's like I don't know exactly their relationship to the school district, but it's like the fundraising arm of the school district that raises money specific for arts education. There might even be an opportunity there, separate from this show, to do more of like an exhibit / fundraising effort to support that too.
Also like the school's music program, which Susan might know a little more about, but like kids don't have band anymore. They do MAP if they do anything. I think it's the Music Arts Project.
There's another visual art and sculptural art competition through Oregon PTA annually called the Reflections Program that some schools might be doing. That's something we could maybe help promote or support.
Yeah, I do think that having the student stuff for this show is probably, as Beata said, maybe like just a bit more than we want to bite off. So, I mean, particularly if people are submitting up to 3 works, it's going to be, I mean, I like to think we'll have hundreds of things to go through. Who knows? Maybe we'll have 20, but, you know, that if we did end up somehow short, that we could have that as a avenue to explore if we end up without
Maybe more.
yeah, we just need more stuff in there, but
Right.
I have
I
the
do like
idea that people will submit stuff.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, I
hopeful.
like the idea of a youth art program through the city. I do feel like we are missing a whole big chunk right there of extremely talented students, but maybe we should highlight that at some point, you know, make it a youth art program. So that would be, I think, really popular, you know, just because there's so many parents that would show up and support. So, in the schools during the school year, I think would be very valuable because we could use their space, and it could be for each one. It could just be maybe supported through our group. But we don't naturally have to do anything really except just be that support and encouragement, right? So we could do it because each school could even have their own. So it could be something that could branch out from this that we could maybe put together as a future to put on there. So was one of my thoughts about.
In Florida, we had a really phenomenal art program throughout the whole entire city. And one of the things that we did as an entire city is we would have tiered group shows for every single school in the whole area. So anyone could apply, and each age, it was separated by age bracket. And every age had a juried show where they would pick the very best pieces of art. And then there was a first, second, and third for every single age group. And as a child, being able to get just a tiny little ribbon that said I won first place at an art competition, you know, it was phenomenal. It was just a really, really amazing thing. And being able to do that outside of your own school is really amazing too, because these kids, they already have a small art community, and being able to see what kids are doing at other schools gives them a very amazing perspective that they don't always get. And so I would suggest that we try and do it as a community and really make it so that we can really see what kids are making at different ages, and then they can go and see, exactly what their peers are making as well. I think it would be very valuable.
Yes, Bata? You're muted.
So, and there come two things to mind. First, I know Wilsonville, the guy who organized that art show in the park area or whatnot. He also had a tent where the student work was in, and they were, I guess, also rewarded with a ribbon or so. But now it's not working anymore, I guess. But maybe we can do something similar. And what came to my mind is, I mean, there might be empty spaces right now in West Linn that we can do like a pop-up show. I don't know if this is in a short period of time until August possible, but if we ask someone from these store owners or whatever is empty, if they would be willing, when we have the opening in the first week or so, show student work, or I don't know, it's kind of a thought, I throw that out. But something like that, or even in the school that we say it's a rotating school display each year or whatever, that we can do something like that and show even in that case to the same time student work and can promote that.
Yeah, Bata, in the last meeting, I mentioned one of the ways that maybe we could promote just getting submissions and more word out of this group was to have a table or something at the farmers market this summer. And this, hopefully it'll be doing again on Old Willamette on Wednesdays. And one of my thoughts to piggyback on your idea, I don't know if there's any stores right now or spaces available in Old Willamette that are empty or vacant. I haven't been down in a bit, but that's a cool idea, and to see if we could have it, because Lake Oswego did that where the old Williams-Sonoma was. It became like a pop-up show, right, in December for artists just to have their different things that they were doing that were actually for sale. It was a pretty big scale. But that's a really great idea, I think, to have is maybe because people in the farmers market, it was very, very popular last summer. And this coming summer, I predict it's going to be very popular again because it's grown so much. And to have art displayed there in some capacity that we're supporting would be really awesome. And then we could focus on that. And then the highlight is going to be our August show, right? So as that becomes something, that would be, I think, kind of labor intensive if we were to do something quickly, but something we could throw around even on a small scale, just having a space that we have for the farmers market or just art display of some sort that's different.
Right. I think what they had in Wilsonville was also a big tent. I don't know who sponsored the tent, or the other question would be how much money do we as a commission are able to spend if something has to be paid for showing, or if we are even willing to pay for something. Also, what about the what is that house, McLean House? Is that the name? Down there, do they have maybe a space for us at that point in time that we can combine it and it's covered? And I don't know how far they are now with these wooden building outside where they want to host weddings or so, that we can use that. So I think there are a few possibilities. We only have to reach out, I guess.
A couple thoughts. So the guy that runs or at least the guy that founded the Wilsonville Festival of the Arts, he also happens to be the retired art teacher from Wilsonville High School. So there's a very explicit connection there. And I suspect that is the path to how the tent came to be. But on a quasi-related note of having kind of a student work booth at a show like that, one thing that we could look into is the Old Time Fair. They're currently courting artists to display at the event. And I suspect we could reach out to them and see if we could get probably even a free booth, or at least some kind of community partner booth.
And that's what I was thinking too. If you want to do the whole farmers market, like we just picked like 3 times during the summer to do it, to highlight. I bet you that we could find a space that we would say just use like I know the like Anne, who owns the ale house, in the back. If we said, Ann, can we just do on this Wednesday, because people are gonna be in, and display in the back and have easels up, and she'd be like, sure, that sounds great. Or she has those things where she'd hang them in the back, right? I know she let us use her space just to do something fun that would be an uplifting thing during Wednesday. So Susan, you've had your hand up for a bit.
Well, don't forget youth music projects on the strip down there.
Yeah.
Willamette. And we have, if we would have to think about the timing of showing pieces. I don't think we'd want you here during our summer camp season. But our last week of summer camp is the week of August 8th. So the second half of August, we might be able to host something here. So I would have to bring it to other people for sure. I'm not the final decision maker on that. But I could certainly make a case for it. And it being youth art, the whole organization would want to welcome families, our space, so.
It could be a back to school, Susan, like a back to school art exhibit thing if you wanted to sponsor something for fun,
Yeah.
So that could be another space we could do it at the end. Just ideas thrown out there.
Just ideas, yes.
Ideas. These are
Do we
awesome.
want to attempt two different shows on roughly the same time frame at the same time?
No.
No, and my thought too was the August one's much bigger and much more labor intensive as this is a whole other thing. I think for the youth thing, which I love where we're going with this. I love Andrew's ideas. I love everything that we're doing, but these would be in a much smaller, like Bob just said, snippets of time, like almost like little pop-ups. And it would be, if you want to display your art, your students in any capacity, right? Then you have to bring your art. This is the time to be there. We're going to hang your art. They have to show up and actually participate. We're not going to do the work for them. I would be there going, okay, tell me about your art, blah, 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 and we're going to display it. So it'd be more of a fun way to commission the art to that kind of space. And we pick certain dates. So one, we could tell like the ale house in the back. This is the date we need for this Wednesday. Youth music project. This is the date we need in August. Maybe there's only 2 dates we take on this whole summer, right? Just to hone on, see how it goes, like a beta test, see how that happens, and see what art we get from kids and different ideas. So, Andrew.
Another thing that we might consider just as kind of a soft launch to these things is just doing it purely online. We could have people just send images of their art. We can jury them, judge the kids' art, group them into categories, and then showcase the best ones, and maybe send the top 3 in each group a little ribbon or something, or a small something. But that would be a good way to just kind of say, hey, look, we're going to be doing more of these things in the future. We're going to start getting people excited about entering into art shows.
Hey, Doug, would it be possible for you to reach out to Shane on our behalf and see whether or not we would have his blessing to spin up our own site to do that? I suspect that would be a faster way of getting it there than asking city IT resources. I want to make sure that we'd have the capacity to do an online show, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to, because I know it can be a lengthier process to have things go through the standard IT update process through the city.
Sure. So I guess the question is, do you want the city to host it, or do you want just the permission to use some other hosting services with some other software?
Are we allowed to host our own site? And if so, what can we do to make sure that we're in accordance with any policies or public record laws?
And so as like a person who used to work at a public agency, I would caution against this group maybe setting up too much of their own stuff. It's a little bit like the Facebook page, like somebody has to pay for it. You have to register the stuff, like who is doing all of that. So it really would be better if the city hosted it or gave us a space to host it. Just so then like in 3 years, when 4 of us are gone and 3 new people are like, you don't have to have somebody keeping track of everything, would be my
My
I guess
guess,
the
my guess it would be both a Shane question and also a communication plan question for Dylan and Jerry. So I'll bring it up with all of them and come back if it's okay. Probably to round everybody up and get a question answered like this might take a little bit of time, but I hope to have it for you in a couple of weeks at least.
I guess
the Arts Commission is
solution-
fired up. They're gonna post some stuff.
I will mention that. Mm.
And
Ideally, they could provide, like, based on what you're saying, Lauren, I think the ideal scenario would be the city provides the infrastructure to host the site. But we wouldn't want to be a burden where we have to rely on the same team that's updating the city website to make any changes to our site, because we don't want to impede the normal flow of communication to say like, oh, hey, you got that caption wrong, or, you know.
I'm going to speak and maybe out of turn, but I'll speak anyway. I think that if we go back to looking at the Dropbox issue, which was a year or two ago now in this, we got that resolved that we could have a Dropbox, which is of course not controlled by, it's not on a city server, but it sits in the cloud and we have access to it to potentially use for something like this. I think in Shane's position and probably from public records, it's the ability for the city to access that information at any time. So if there's a master password that we can be using that would transcend across, boards changing, I'm betting that is something that he would consider or the city would consider, which would then allow for access for all of you or for those that are chosen to do it to make updates with still the ability for the city to access it for public records purposes or historical purposes going forward as commissions change and personnel at cities change.
And I'm also thinking if we do all that, we should promote that sooner or later with the schools. I don't know if the teachers or art teacher or in general, whoever is in charge for the kids' arts work in schools, that they have that knowledge. Hey, we might be able to get into a little show. Doesn't matter if it's online or really hanging a show somewhere else, but they maybe can do work for that specific event that they can maybe start after spring break or so, if we really want to go forward with that, because that's also what they need to know on, or how do we want to let those kids know that we want to have that their artwork in a show. So I guess we can connect to the teachers is an easier way than getting the word out to all the children.
Yes. Susan, you've had your hand up for a while.
Thanks. Yeah, I am not an advocate for an online show for children. Just want to say, I think it's fine if we do display folks stuff online, but I think there should be an in-person component to it all. I don't think that's I don't know the visual art world as well as I know the kid world. And I just don't think that would have a great impact on kids. Having a champion within a school, or at least in the school district here, as an information sharing partner to get to kids can be challenging. If you haven't worked in schools before, you can't just drop off a note and say, will you please send this to all the kids in the district or whatever. You kind of have to have a champion. And so there needs to be a little bit of a thought process on if we're going to distribute information through schools, and we need to identify who those champions are for us.
I have a champion at Rosemont for sure, and a couple of the other art community in the schools. You go through the district, obviously, you send it to the district, they distribute it to the schools and to the art teachers. And I know that she would do it if we wanted to do that. I think she'd be excited to do something for her.
Yeah, and we also have to consider that teachers have a lot on their plate, even art teachers meet specific standards, and we can't, it's very hard for them to work something into their teaching day that doesn't serve the standards in some way. So we would probably want to either partner with them on how can we create something that helps them meet their own goals, or it has to be extracurricular in some way, where it's like, here kids, here's an opportunity, but you don't really get to work on it in class because we have to do these other things.
I think they only should know that there is a possibility, and then they choose the kids can choose something what they worked on. So I don't want to say that they have to do an extra project for it. But I mean, if the teacher does it, that's a good thing or not. But in general, I know for my daughter, when she went to high school, they had to do drawings of whatever toothpaste tubes. And then after a while, because people said that's a funny idea, they showed the work later on. So it was anyway an assignment. So that's what I was talking about, that they can pick and choose something from what they already work on. But if they know upfront that might be ending up in a show, maybe then they have more effort to do anyway the work.
Doug, then Lauren, you're next.
Thank you. So I'm the liaison for the city to the school district, and I can tell you that what Susan said is correct. And I will also tell you that the school district is really guarded as was explained about giving out any other information from outside agencies. We're able and have been successful in doing it for the library, but it took us 5 years and to do that so we could get summer reading programs. What I can say, which is not to be a deterrent, but the school district is looking at parity all the time. And so they will automatically, almost from a school district perspective, not necessarily consider something that only would be for West Linn, because they are a school district that represents 2 cities. So they're always looking. So when we work in the libraries, we work together with Wilsonville's to do those kind of things. So my suggestion would be that if you really want to potentially have some resonance with the school district, and I'm happy to be your advocate as that is my job, is to make sure that there's potential for it to also be something that expands across the whole school district. They're ultimately always concerned about that and want that to be first and foremost, so that they're not looking like they're just choosing one community over another.
Thank you, Doug. And Lauren?
Excuse me. I guess I love all of these ideas, and I would also just caution us against trying to do too much at once. I feel like the August art show is already like, no, whatever. I do think we should try to do something to include the youth. I am just inherently a planner, so I want to have like a fully fledged plan before I say things or do things usually. So I just would want to be really thoughtful about like, how do we interact with this district? And as Doug has mentioned, and Susan, of like, you can't just like go in and say, give us your art. And I have little kids, so I know like my kindergartner has drawn me 16 things today. So I think it invites a lot of you'll want to be really thoughtful about how we set it up and group it up, that it's more than just high school. Anyway, and I think if we can sort of dial in a little bit, getting art and artists for August, and then going forward, we will have a database and we'll have information that we can do maybe a fall pop-up or a pop-up at the winter festival on Willamette. I think these are fantastic ideas, but the implementation sometimes is going to be more complicated than it sounds or feels. So to kind of also stay on track a little bit for focusing on August, and then keeping all of these ideas and not letting them go, but I'm going to try and rein us in just a little bit and hopefully not squash everybody.
I think especially since this is our first big event. I mean, obviously there's pandemic, we're still a relatively new group. We have any number of excuses, but we have gotten 3 years into this and haven't done an event yet. So I don't think that we should underestimate the amount of effort it will take to do that.
Thank you, Lauren. Doug, did you have your hand up again? No, okay.
I'm sorry, I just didn't take it down. My apologies.
Okay. No, thank you. And Lauren, you're right. We're trying to absolutely stay on track. I think we get excited and we segue a little bit. I think they're wonderful ideas. I think that's great to take it and table it for now. We can discuss it more. And if there's interest to do something on a smaller scale, like I love the old time fair, to see if we want to do something fun. It's always a fun thing to be present at. We can talk about that at a later time. But right now, let's move on to it says bylaws to cancel to be announced. That's old business. No.
Well, just the update there is thanks to Mel for getting us on the agenda for City Council on March 14th, and we'll be. I don't know to what extent we're expected to present versus just to be there for questions, but the bylaws that we authored like 2 years ago are going to be voted on if all goes according to plan. So that's exciting.
Yes.
I will reread them so that I remember what's in them.
All right. Thank you. Any other
And
comments?
Carrie, you're the one that's attending, or is anyone else going? Seated?
I'll definitely be attending, and if other folks want to attend.
I assume they're still online, right?
They are online. So if anybody on the commission wants an invite, email me and I will get you one. And Kathy won't send those out until the day of the meeting, which is Monday, the 14th. So if you want to jump on, it's a WebEx call. So
I also don't want to interrupt, but I'm going to say that I do believe it will be hybrid in person on the 14th. So with the
Okay.
mask mandate, so you have an option. You can do it just like this on WebEx, or you can also appear before the council in the council chambers that day. And I'll be there, and Mel will be there as well, in either virtually or in person.
and you don't have to be there for the whole meeting. Kathy thought it'd probably be around 7 p.m. that you'd be on the agenda item. So sometimes council can go a long time.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, as far as new business, I feel like we covered a lot of new business with talking about a youth program, a youth art program, old time fair, farmers market, if we want to do something there. I think we have a lot of new business that we can marinate on. Do I sound correct? Is there any other new business that we want to discuss? We went through the draft for the call to artists for the show for August. Any other new business?
I must have a slightly wrong agenda in front of me, but I have that you wanted to talk about art walks and I didn't know what that was.
Oh, you know what? You're right. I did. And I'm going to share with you what I made, my inspiration. So can you see my screen? Do you see you guys too, or do I have to move you guys? No? You can
I just
I see me too.
Can I just jump in here for a
agenda.
sec? Can I just jump in here for a second in regards
Sure.
to the agenda? I don't know where this agenda that we're all looking at was created, because the agenda that's posted on the city website is the one that Lauren's
Oh.
looking at and that I have. So when Carrie emailed me Friday, I was gone on vacation, to have me add what she had requested me to add. I go in, I update the agenda, and then I have to repost it to the city website. So if we need changes to the agenda, you guys need to send them to me so that I can post them, so that they can go to City Hall, or so I can post them on the city website. Because if somebody's watching this and it's not matching up with the agenda that everybody else has, it can get a little confusing. And for public records, we need to follow in line of what we have on the set agenda. Does that make sense? So that's probably, Lauren,
Absolutely.
why you're looking at the same agenda that I'm looking at, because I don't.
Yeah, and I pulled up the last one up that was
Yeah.
in my email, and that's my fault, but
So just make sure, because I have to go in and create it in a Word, then I got to turn it into a PDF, then I have to put it up to the website, and that YouTube link up there, when I go and post the minute drafts, if somebody wants to look online for the agendas and minutes on the city website, they click on that link and they can watch this entire video.
Right.
So just for future reference.
yeah,
So
thank you.
just
I
clarification.
don't think I was planning on running the entire thing. So I just was like, oh, wait, I have it here. So my apologies.
Okay.
So Art Walk, I went just recently to Napa Valley with my friends, and they they have art walk all over, obviously in Napa Valley. And so I wanted to share with you just some of the ideas that I had, which this was a rock forest that I thought was very interesting, simple and easy. They took a blank space and made it something very cool to look at. The next one I have is that we saw there is that I can show in a full format, was they actually have it where it is like a piece of art. There's the QR code. It tells about the artist. It was made from reclaimed metal. It was just a fun, neat idea. Another thing that we could possibly think about in our own town.
Charity, I'm still seeing the page with the agenda. I'm not seeing, do you have?
Oh, you are?
That are supposed to be,
Oh, darn it. Well, let
And
me
I
see if
see a
I can-
white,
it's very, I don't like
Okay.
driving these meetings. I get it.
Okay,
Like the right
hold on
thing.
just a second, and I'm gonna back it out then. There we go. So you're only seeing this, okay, so let me share it with you. I'm going to, let me share. Okay. I'm not used to the Zoom. I'm used to Teams where it switches around with you. Okay, so now do you see it? You see the rock?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
There you go. So here's the rock forest, very fun and simple. The next one is the macaw that was made from reclaimed metals. They all have a QR code. Everything is a QR code that talks about the artist and where it came from. Another place we went was, this is a mural that was done at one of the local restaurants that was huge. It's actually a waterfall. This was a local store, basically they're a piece of art store that just looked really amazing. Another piece of art that we found walking around also had a QR code. This was painted on the walls in Napa. Napa had walls painted all over the place. One of the stops we went to was, this was Bono. This is a local artist that she did a whole bunch of neat art on top of glass, I believe is what she was using as her element. And then they had a whole light festival going on in Napa as well. So it just gave me inspiration for our group to all different things that we could just tap into something simple as a very basic art walk, starting with something as basic as one of the things that they had was people painted on the little rocks and left little sayings all over this town. And so it was very, very neat and different, but also some of these are much bigger, but it could be something that we could aspire to, like you said, for the roundabouts, that could be something that could be simple. Maybe it has to be driven up on by, like you said, a semi truck. But this was just ideas that I found that were inspirational and that we could use and we could strive for. So that's what I just wanted to share.
I think the idea of that map, what Carrie started to create, it was kind of, maybe later on we can make it also in an art walk in West Linn to say, hey, down on the river is this. And I mean, it's way apart, but I guess that was also an idea from us too, to make it later on in an artwork. And maybe if we have more art to show outside, that would be even nice to add that to that thought.
Yeah, and I think we already have some fun elements, just like the totem poles that are behind the library that are neat right by the little share library house there. You know, it's just a cute little way to walk through the paths and go see the totem poles. And I think there's actually elements of art all over our town that we already can use as a fun, a fun way to just have people go on a little search. Like you said, I love the mapping that was done. And I think it'd be a neat way to continue that, to make it with the QR codes and just say, this is why the totem poles are made, and fun things like that. So it was just an idea. Just wanted to share with you just ideas of something, again, that we could look at doing on a much smaller scale. Obviously, these are pretty established, but it could be kind of fun to look at for future.
And please add to the list of art already in our city, and we'll get that map all finished.
Yeah.
If anyone knows of anything not on there.
Well, the totem poles aren't on there. That's a good one.
Yeah, the totem poles are one of my favorite things. So I love seeing the totem poles. So
Add them. Yeah, that spreadsheet that Lauren started of art in West Linn should be editable by everybody. And if it's not, then bark at Lauren or me and we can make it so. I had one thing that I wanted to bring up real quick, just something to float out there. So I got, Doug and I got a message from Lori Griffith, a former member of the Arts Commission. And she's working on, let me look to make sure I don't get the event title wrong. She's on the planning committee for the Centennial Archbridge celebration that is scheduled for October 1st. And one of the things that and so there's going to be various events on both ends of Archbridge. And one of the things that's going to be happening on the Westland side is a plein air art event. And she wanted to know if we would like to be involved in that, and if so, in what capacity. And that sounded like a fun thing, especially since somebody else is organizing it, a way of, again, kind of furthering awareness that our group exists. We have funding, so we might be able to, like I know at the Beaverton Arts Mix plein air events, you sign up in advance and all the participants get like a cute little goodie bag of random Beaverton branded things. And so maybe we could do something similar. They also do a competition afterward, which I never win, but my children always do. So kind of back to the comment earlier, Andrew, about how meaningful it can be for kids to be recognized in something like that. So there's no shortage of things we might be able to do associated with that event. It is right on the tail of our August event, but we can participate as much or as little as we want to, and just throwing it out there.
So I just want to clarify, I just re-looked at the email since Doug shared it with everybody. It looks like she is setting up the Oregon City side and is asking if we would like to set up the Westland side of the plein air painting, which is fine. I just want to make sure we're not like, oh yeah, we don't have to do anything. And then we do. So she might have like all the resources for what it looks like and how you do set it up, but unless I'm looking at the wrong thing.
Let's confirm with her. I'm reading we are doing that. She's part of a committee that's doing stuff on both sides of the bridge. I suspect that they'll take help in whatever form and extent that they can get it. Yeah, we can reach out to Lori to confirm, what's happening, who owns what pieces. Do we have?
I just don't know, like, where do we go? What does that look like?
I have a little information on that. There is a group that's meeting with us that's from the Westland contingency side. And so I think that we can ask them, and Jody who's now off the call, is very involved in that as well. I can talk to John Williams, but I do know the Oregon City side is much more excited at this point and has a lot more people working on their end of this event for October. And so they've been geared up at the council level and at other levels there much for a longer period of time than on the Westland side. So I don't think that Lori was asking for us to kind of be the anchoring piece, but I think if we want to be part of it, but I think that's part of the Historical Society is also part of a bigger group like Main Street, Willamette, and the city and parks and other folks. So I can get us looped into the next time that they're meeting. Of course, also Jody can probably talk about it at the next arts and culture meeting as well.
That'd be fun to get more information. It sounds like a great idea.
The other thing I just wanted to say real quickly is I did post in the text messaging section of this, the responses from Lance about that. And he is going to be talking about this on March 7th with council. So we can tune into that, and also we can take the extract of it. He also said he'd be happy to meet with this group in the future if you would like as well. So that should be at least part answers for the questions that you had from earlier this meeting.
Thanks. I had thought that transportation projects did qualify now. I thought that was one of the changes we had made, but we can go back and double check. And I'm sure either way that Lauren, Finance Lauren, would be in the loop on that and would be able to determine which ones are earmarked for us or not.
All right, we have any, moving on, any other board comments before we adjourn?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, well, I really think this has been a great meeting, lots of great information. I now have the right agenda that I pulled up onto the screen, Melanie, so it's the right one. I was like, oh yeah, here's the right one. So I've got that up. But I think for our next meeting, we'll have some great talk. I think the August show is going to be really awesome. Just follow up. We need to tighten up any comments like for Carrie for the distribution, so we can send that out so it's ready to go, so we can get on a time frame. So make sure you take a look at that, so we can, by the next meeting, that can be finalized and we can go ahead and get that to the community. Lauren, you've got your hand up.
I was just going to ask Doug if maybe he can see if Cheryl might be available for either the April meeting or at the very latest, the May meeting, to help us. Or if she can look at what Carrie has put together or something before
I
that.
will email your draft to her and have her compare it to what we have. And then like Doug and I, sorry, Doug, I didn't mean to jump in front of you, but I'm happy to email it and then we can check with Cheryl.
Yeah, she normally works Wednesday nights, so she would be available to meet with us. And again, just as a refresher, we will you will have the opportunity to meet in hybrid forum like this or in person in the community room for our next meeting in April.
And I figured, Mel, that I would, because right now my list of questions for Cheryl at the end of that document are very like flow of consciousness. Oh, she asked about this. And I figured I could turn them into actual complete sentences that that would be easier.
Perfect. Yes. So in the email, just email me the draft and then with your specific questions, and then I will be sure to get it on to her, and I will CC your email with her so that you guys can kind of connect with any questions. And then like Doug said, she works Wednesday night. So and she'll be at the library on the 6th. So, and Doug and I will be at the library with whoever else shows up for the next meeting. So we could pull her in and get more detailed information for you guys for the show.
That sounds perfect. So does that sound like a plan to try to be in good shape to vote on the call for art at the April meeting?
I think so. It gives us a month to look at it. So I really think we should be able to vote on that and say it's good to go. If we need to mull in between, I think that's good too.
Well, yeah, so I was going to back out from there. So end of March, we would need to have it ready to be a part of the meeting packet so that it can be in the public record. So if folks could aim for like mid-month to have at least initial comments, changes, etc., then we can get that into more of a fully baked version for everybody to review. So with any luck, when we reconvene in April, we're just making little tweaks here and there and not wholesale or substantive changes.
Do it over spring break.
Ideas for names.
I think that's great. Okay, any other comments? Anything we have? Melanie, thank you for setting everything out for us.
Decide what we wanted to do with the ideas for the name of the show. Do we want to have a document? Do we want to just send ideas via email, or what should we do?
I thought I heard we could make suggestions on the document, right?
That might get a little crowded.
You can do that to the extent that it's not super messy. We can change the permissions on the document so that it's just editable. I guess the only reason I hesitated there was, to be honest, I don't have as much experience doing any kind of collaborative authoring in Google Docs where I want to be able to see what changed. And so I don't think it'll track changes the same way Word does. So maybe we just start up another document where everybody tosses stuff in there. There's a similar feature in our Dropbox. There's Dropbox Paper, which is Dropbox's attempt to do a Google Docs 365-esque collaborative thing. So if folks are comfortable logging into our collective Dropbox, you can start a new paper document. We all log in with the same credentials. So we could all just, like, you don't even have to share the document with anybody because we share the login. So you could just rattle off ideas in that piece of paper in the Dropbox. That's how I also posted a bunch of sample calls. Does everybody know how to log into Dropbox? Do the new folks have access to that? So we can send out the login information to that.
That would be great. Okay. Well, I think if we are done, and then we are going to work on the next draft as a follow-up, then I think we